Jam Vishnupad Paramahansa Parivajikacharya Stotara Sada Sri Srimadi's Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada Ki Jai Samavita Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai Gaur Premanande Hari Hari Bol All
Hari
glories to
Bol.
assembled devotee disciples. All glories to assembled devotee disciples. All glories to assembled devotee disciples. All glories to Shri Shri Guru and Gauranga Hari Hari Bol.
Hare Krishna. Thank you, Madhupati Prabhu. Thank you for joining. Let's welcome all of you saying Hari Bol 3 times. Hari Bol. Hari
Hari
Bol.
Bol.
Let's also welcome Grace Madhupati Prabhu. This beautiful verses. Welcome Roji saying Hari Bol 3 times. Hari Bol.
Hari Bol. Hari Bol.
Hari Bol.
Hare Krishna. Thank you very much. जय जय श्री चैतन्य जय नित्यानंद जय अद्वैत चंद्र जय गौर भक्त वृंदा जय जय श्री चैतन्य जय नित्यानंद जय अद्वैत चंद्र जय गौर भक्त वृंदा जय जय श्री चैतन्य जय नित्यानंद जय अद्वैत चंद्र जय गौर भक्त वृंदा Reading from Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita Adi Leela, 4th chapter, verse 66 and 67. This chapter is titled Confidential Reasons for Lord's Appearance. Tattvam Visuddham Vasudeva Sabditam Yate Tatra Puman Apavrita Satve च तस्मिन् भगवान् वासुदेवो हे यदक्षजो मे मनसा विधीयते सत्वां विसिद्धां वासुदेव शब्दितं यद् यते तत्र पुमान् अपावृतः सत्वे च तस्मिन् भगवान् वासुदेवो यदक्षज मे मनसा विधीयते तत्त्वं विशुद्धं वासुदेव शब्दितं यद्यते तत्र पुमान् अपावृतः तत्त्वे च तस्मिन् भगवान् वासुदेवो यदक्षज मे मनसा विधीयते Sattvam, existence, Vishuddham, pure, Vasudeva Sabditam, named Vasudeva Sabditam, named Vasudeva, Yat, from which Yate appears, Tatra, in that, Puman, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Apavritaha, without any covering, Satve, in goodness, Cha, and, Tasmin, that, Bhagwan, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Vasudeva, Vasudev, he certainly, Adoksajaha, who is beyond the senses, me, my, Manasa, by the mind, Vidiyate, is procured. Translation purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta, Swami Prabhupada, Srila Prabhupada ki Jai. The condition of pure goodness, Suddha Sattva, in which the Supreme Personality of Godhead is revealed without any covering, is called Vasudeva. In that pure state, the Supreme Godhead, who is beyond the material senses and who is known as Vasudeva, is pursued by my mind. Yeah. Purport. This text from Srimad Bhagavatam, 4th canto, 3rd chapter, 23rd verse, spoken by Lord Shiva, when he condemned Daksha, the father of Sati, as an opponent of Vishnu, confirms beyond a doubt that Lord Krishna, his name, his fame, his qualities, and everything in connection with his paraphernalia exist in the Sandhini Shakti of the Lord's internal potency. So let's go to that verse. The living entity is constitutionally pure. Asanga hi ayam purushaha. In the Vedic literature, it is said that the soul is always pure and uncontaminated by material attachment. The identification of the body with the soul is due to misunderstanding. As soon as one is fully Krishna conscious, it is to be understood that one is in his pure, original, constitutional position. This state of existence is called Suddha Sattva, which means that it is transcendental to the material qualities. Since this Suddha Sattva existence is under the direct action of the internal potency, in this state the activities of material consciousness stop. For example, when iron is put into a fire, it becomes warm, and when red hot, although it is iron, it acts like fire. Similarly, when copper is surcharged with electricity, its action as copper stops. It acts as electricity. Bhagavad Gita 14, chapter 26 verse also confirms that anyone who engages in transcendental devotional service to the Lord is at once elevated to the position of pure Brahman. Mam chayo avyabhicharena bhakti yogena sevate sagunan samatit yaitan brahma bhuyaya kalpate. Therefore, Suddha Sattva, as described in this verse, is a transcendental position which is technically called Vasudeva. Vasudev is also the name of the person from whom Krishna appears. So this verse explains that the pure state is called Vasudev because in that state, Vasudeva, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, is revealed without any covering. To execute unadulterated devotional service, therefore, one must follow the rules and regulations of devotional service without desire to gain material profit by fruitive activities of mental speculation. So we'll stop here a little bit here so that we can understand till this particular point. Om Agyanatimirandasya Gyananjana Salakaya Chakshurmitan Yena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manovistam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swam Rupa Kadaha Mayam Dadati Swapadantikam Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prestaya Bhutale Gurudas Yadvaita Swaminiti Namine Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prestaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swaminiti Namine Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Sunyavadi Paschata Deshatarine. In this chapter, we see that the confidential reasons for the Lord's appearance as Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is explained. In the beginning of the chapter, we saw that the external reasons were explained, and now are the internal reasons being explained. Especially we see in the earlier verses, before we came to this verse, it was explained that um, to understand the mood of Srimati Radharani, right? To understand the mood of Srimati Radharani and her longing in this conjugal rasa sringa rasa for the Supreme Lord, Krishna, um, the Lord personally appeared in this Krishna form, golden form, not Shama form, Krishna form. Krishna Vanam Tvisha Akrishnam. Right? Right? In the mood of Srimati Radharani. Right? In the mood of Srimati Radharani. Now, the Gaura Tattva is the combined form of Radha and Krishna. Originally, Krishna is one form, right? Then he appears as two, Radha and Krishna. Then again, they combine as Radha Krishna to combine as Gauranga Mahaprabhu. So Gaura Tattva is a combined form of Radha and Krishna. Radha Krishna Pranaya Vikriti Ladini Shakti Asmad. The loving affairs of Sri Radha and Krishna are the transcendental manifestation of the Lord's internal pleasure-giving potency. Right? Although Radha and Krishna are one in their identity, they separated themselves eternally. And now these two transcendental identities have again united in the form of Sri Krishna Chaitanya. Chaitanakyam prakatam aduna tad dvayam shaikyam aptam Radha Bhava Dhyuti Suvalitam Naumi Krishna Swarupam. I bow down to him who manifested himself with the sentiment and complexion of Srimati Radharani, although he is Krishna himself. So Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is Krishna himself, but he manifested with the sentiment and complexion of Srimati Radharani. With the sentiment of Srimati Radharani and the complexion of Srimati Radharani. And then the position of Srimati Radharani in reference to the Lord's energies are mentioned. That Lord Krishna has external energy, which is Mahamaya, right? And then he has internal energy, which is Yogamaya, right? External energy Mahamaya, internal energy Yogamaya. We come under the influence of external energy, Mahamaya, right? So his energies are Antarangi Shakti, internal energy, Bahirangi Shakti, external energy, and Tatastha Shakti, which are the living entities. Right? Tatastha Shakti, which are the living entities. So there are, the Lord is Sat Chit Ananda, right? Sat, eternal, Chit, knowledge, Ananda, bliss. So his energies, his spiritual energy, accordingly has three aspects. Sandhini, existential potency or Sat, Samvit, knowledge potency, Chit, and Ladini, bliss potency or Ananda. Right? The three aspects, Sandhini, Samvit Ladini. So that Sandhini potency, right, which is called as an existential potency, Krishna's existence rests upon the essential portion of the Sandhini potency called the Suddha Tattva. Right. So his mother, father, the abode, house, the bedding, seats, and so on are all its transformation of the Sandhini potency, the existential potency. So these words further describes about the Suddha Tattva, which is also called as Vasudev, right? Pure consciousness. Suddha Tattva is. Suddha Tattva is called the pure consciousness. The Vasudev state of a living entity is called pure consciousness. Right? Pure consciousness. And Lord Shiva, similarly, is in this pure consciousness. This is also in the Suddha Sattva stage. And so when he condemns Daksha Prajapati, the father of Madhupati, in these particular words quoted in Chaitanya Caritamrita and further explained so nicely in Bhagavatam, fourth chapter, fourth canto, third chapter, 23rd verse. It's explaining in detail about the Suddha Sattva, Vasudeva state. The living entity is constitutionally pure. Asangahi ayam purusaha. Right? It's constitutionally pure. It identifies itself with the body due to the misunderstanding of the soul, where the soul thinks that, no, out of misunderstanding things, the body or that covering of false ego makes him feel why Krishna is only enjoyer. So he tries to enjoy himself, the Lord. Man proposes, God disposes. Lord facilitates his free will and puts him into this material world. Right? Puts him into this material world. Portrays Durga. That's why the material energy is also called Durga, portrays. Mahamaya. Tribhigunamai bhavai ibim sarvam idam jagatam. This entire energy, this Bairangi Shakti, is divided into these three modes of material nature. The whole world comes under the influence of these three modes of material nature. So Mahamaya does this illusory, does this thankless task of putting the living entities into illusion to make them feel. Out of that misunderstanding, then the soul starts identifying itself with the body. And then it is just based on the experience of the body, it goes to the pains and pleasures of the body, and it just identifies itself that this is the real pain and real pleasure. But constitutionally, it is completely pure. Mamai Vanso Jiva Loka, Jiva Bhuta Sanatana, it's part and parcel of the Supreme Lord. It is infinitesimal. It has the same quality as a Supreme Lord, Satchidananda. And it is covered by this calm, krodh, lobh, mat, moh, matsarya, right? And in that covered condition, it identifies with the body. But when, by performing Nitya Siddha Krishna Mema Sadhya Kabunai, Shravanadi Shuddha Chitta Karayodai, Shravanadi, by performance of devotional service, uh, when the heart is cleaned, Shuddha Chitta, pure consciousness, awakens, Uday, awakens, right? And in that pure consciousness, it understands Krishna not superficially, it understands Krishna in his pure original constitutional position. That, oh, I am just the servant of the Lord. Right? And that condition is the Suddha Sattva state. And Prabhupada gives the analogy of this iron and fire. When red hot, iron acts like a fire. Or when copper is surcharged with electricity, it does not act anymore as copper, it acts as electricity. Similarly, one who engages in unadulterated devotional service to the Lord is Brahma Bhuya Kalpate, is on the position of Brahman, spirit soul. Aham Brahmasmi, it identifies himself then that, oh, I am the spirit soul. I am no longer this misidentifying with the body. Right. Yeah. So in that state, through the sattva state, it explains that the pure state is called Vasudeva, because in that state, Vasudeva, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, is revealed without any covering. In pure devotional service, one simply serves the Supreme Personality of Godhead as a matter of duty without reason and without being impeded by material conditions. Right. It completely Satatam Kirtan Tamam Vetantas Chadidavita completely serves the Supreme Personality of Godhead without being impeded by material conditions. In that state, the Supreme Person Krishna is revealed in the heart of the devotee. In that state of Vasudeva state, Krishna is revealed in the heart of the devotee. The jnanis attain that position after Bhavanam Janmanante Jnanavan Mam Prapadate Vasudevam Sarvamiti Sa Mahatma Dulabha. After many, many births, they come to that understanding. But a person performing devotional service, right, in its pure devotional service platform, he serves the Supreme Personality of Godhead without being impeded by material conditions. Right. Srila Jiva Goswami nicely explains this Vasudeva Ashuddha Sattva stage in his Bhagavad Sandarbha. He explains that Astotarastata, when we say in our pranami, right, Om, Astotarastata is, right, Astotarastata is divine grace, Sri Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada ki jai. Astotarasata is 108. Is added to the name of the spiritual master to indicate one who is situated in the Shuddha Sattva or in the transcendental state of Vasudeva. The word Vasudeva is also used for other purposes. For example, Vasudeva also means one who is everywhere or all pervading. The sun is called Vasudeva Sabditam. The word Vasudeva may be utilized for different purposes, but whatever purposes we adopt, Vasudeva means the all pervading or localized Supreme Personality of Godhead. In Bhagavad Gita, the verse which we quoted, 7th chapter, 19th verse, Bhavanam Janmante, it is also stated, Vasudeva Sarvamiti. Factual realization is to understand Vasudeva, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and surrender unto Him. So Vasudeva is a ground wherein Vasudeva, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, is revealed. So Vasudeva state or the Suddha Sattva state of consciousness is the ground. In that pure consciousness state, Vasudeva is revealed right within our heart, the localized. Vasudeva, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So when one is free from the contamination of material nature and is situated in pure consciousness or in the Vasudeva state, Vasudeva, the Supreme Person, is revealed. This state is also called Kaivalya, which means pure consciousness. And then Srila Prabhupada explains about this Kaivalya, that how the impersonalists also talk about Kaivalya, oneness. But the Vaishnavas, right, their talk of Kaivalya is not oneness as becoming one with the Supreme Lord, but the Krishna consciousness Kaivalya, when one understands the Supreme Personality of Godhead, then one is successful in that pure state by hearing, chanting, remembering, etc. Because of the development of knowledge of the science of Krishna, one can understand the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So all these activities are under the guidance of the internal energy of the Supreme Lord. Right? It's under the guidance of the internal energy of the Supreme Lord. The pure consciousness of the Supreme Personality of Godhead is revealed, or the Shuddha Sattva state is under the guidance of the internal energy of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. The action of the internal potency is also described in this verse as apavritaha, free from any covering. Free from any covering. What are the coverings? We talked about Kam, Krodh, Lobh, Moh, Matsarya, those are all the coverings. But apavrita stage, free from any covering, because the Supreme Personality of Godhead, His name, His form, His quality, His paraphernalia, etc., being transcendental, are beyond material nature. It is not possible to understand any one of them with the material senses. Atasi Krishna Namadi na bhavet grayam indriyai. By our blunt material senses, we cannot understand it. So when the senses are purified by the discharge of pure devotional service, Rishikena Rishikesha Sevana Bhakti Uttamam or Bhakti Uchate, the pure senses can see Krishna without covering. Right. So Srila Prabhupada poses a question here. Now, one may inquire that since factually the devotee has the same material existential body, how is it possible that the same materialistic eyes become purified by devotional service? The example as stated by Lord Caitanya is that devotional service cleanses the mirror of the mind. In a clean mirror, one can see one's face very distinctly. Similarly, simply by cleansing the mirror of the mind, one can have a clear conception of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. It is stated in Bhagavad Gita, 8th, chapter 8th verse, Abhyas Yoga Yuktena. By executing one's prescribed duties in devotional service, Cheta Gamina, or simply by hearing about God and chanting about Him, if one's mind is always engaged in chanting and hearing and is not allowed to go elsewhere, one can realize the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Right? Yeah. And further, Lord Shiva describes, and Prabhupada nicely mentions that Lord Shiva said that since his heart was always filled with the conception of Vasudeva, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, because of the Supreme Lord's presence within his mind and heart, he was always offering obeisances unto that Supreme Godhead. In other words, Lord Shiva is always in trance, samadhi. So this samadhi is not under the control of the devotee, it is under the control of Vasudeva. Right. That's where he did not stand up or offer respects when Daksha came in the assembly, and Daksha uh, felt insulted, thinking that, oh, why Lord Shiva, who is my son-in-law, did not stand up when all the other demigods stood up out of respect. Right. So there was the Shuddha Sattva platform, which is nicely explained in these particular words. Let's go back 1 minute. Hold on for one moment. And on that platform, the Supreme Personality of Godhead as Vasudeva is revealed without any covering. Right. So the Sattva stage is called Vasudeva, and in that state, Vasudeva is revealed. Right. So that revelation within the living entity and that revelation of the Supreme Personality of Godhead's name, fame, qualities, and everything in connection with his paraphernalia is the existential potency of the Supreme Lord, or Sandhini Shakti of the Lord's internal potency. Then further, Krishna Bhagavate Jnana Samviteda Shara Brahma Jnana Adika Sabatara Parivara. So now the second potency or second aspect of the Lord's energy, from Sandhini to Samvit aspect of the Lord's energy. The essence of the Samvit potency is knowledge of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. The essence of the Samvit potency is knowledge that the Supreme Personality of Godhead is Lord Krishna. All other kinds of knowledge, such as the knowledge of Brahman, are its components. For the activities of the Samvit Shakti produce the effect of cognition. Both the Lord and the living entities are cognizant. Sri Krishna, as the Supreme Personality of Godhead, has full knowledge of everything everywhere, and therefore there are no hindrances to his cognition. He can have knowledge merely by glancing over an object, whereas innumerable impediments block the cognition of ordinary living entities. The cognition of the living beings has three divisions: direct knowledge, indirect knowledge, and perverted knowledge. Sense perception of material objects by the mundane senses, such as the eye, ear, nose, and hand, always produces definitely perverted knowledge. Right? This illusion is a presentation of the material energy, which is influenced by the Samvit Shakti in a perverted manner. Negative cognition of an object beyond the reach of sense perception is the way of indirect knowledge, which is not altogether imperfect, but which produces only a fragmentary knowledge in the form of impersonal spiritual realization and monism. But when the samvit factor of cognition is enlightened by the Ladini potency of the same internal energy, they work together, and only thus can one attain knowledge of the personality of Godhead. The samvit Sakti should be maintained in that state. Material knowledge and indirect spiritual knowledge are byproducts of the samvit Sakti. So, this knowledge potency of the Supreme Lord, which is also one aspect of the Lord's internal energy, the Samvit Sakti, is explained. That how there are three divisions: direct knowledge, indirect knowledge, and perverted knowledge. Perverted knowledge is knowledge which is attained by our senses. Right. Because by our mundane senses, were just by its experiences with sense objects, it develops, it stores those perceptions, right? The experiences of the senses on the sense objects. So those perceptions which are stored, because it is based on senses which are, to begin with, they are an illusion, where it's misidentifying itself with the body. That form of knowledge is called as a perverted knowledge. Right? And then there is indirect knowledge. There are also the byproducts. This both perverted knowledge and indirect knowledge are the byproducts of this real Sambit Sakti of the Supreme Lord. Right? Where negative cognition of an object beyond the reach of sense perception, right? Beyond the reach of sense perception. Now it's beyond the reach of sense perception. Is the way of indirect knowledge, which is not altogether imperfect, but which produces only fragmentary knowledge in the form of impersonal spiritual realization and monism. Right. The negative cognition of an object. The object is there, the Supreme Lord, but the negative cognition of it, where neti, the process of, oh, it is not this, or it, it's not this, it's not this, it's not this, it's not this. Ultimately, it comes, that negative cognition comes to the realization of impersonal spiritual realization that Aham Brahmasmi. It is not this, Lord is not this, Lord is not this, Lord is not this. But since it is based on your mental faculty, it comes to impersonal realization of the Supreme Lord. When it comes to the impersonal realization of the Supreme Lord, or monism, or voidism, that oh, ultimately there is nothing. The Lord is, everything is void. Right. So impersonal realization and monism. But when it is enlightened, when the same Sambit potency's factor of cognition is enlightened by the Ladini potency of the same internal energy, they work together, and only thus can one attain knowledge of the personality of Godhead. Right. One can attain knowledge of the personality of Godhead. Initially, in the previous verse, we saw about the Sangini, Shakti or Swarupa Shakti of the Supreme Lord is realized on the Shuddha Sattva or Vasudev consciousness, pure consciousness, right? And then when the Samvit factor of cognition is enlightened by the Ladini potency of the same internal energy, one can attain knowledge of the personality of Godhead, right? So this Samvit Shakti should be maintained in that state. Material knowledge and indirect spiritual knowledge are byproducts of the Samvit Shakti. So Lord Krishna has full knowledge, Trikalagya, of past, present, and future. Natve ham jatu nasam natve neme janati paha na chaimam bhavishmana sarvam vayam ataparam. Right. He has full knowledge of everything, everywhere, and therefore there are no hindrances to his cognition. Right. So just by glancing on the object, he can know the past, present, and future of that object. While our cognition is blocked by impediments because we have limited knowledge. It's blocked by impediments. Those impediments are our anarthas. Right? Yeah. Okay. Are there any questions? Let's take some questions. It's quite philosophical.
Hare Krishna Prabhuji. Nice class. Can you give me an example of Paroksh Jnana?
Example of
Paroksh Jnana.
Paroksha?
Paroksh Jnana. Pratyaksha Jnana, Paroksh Jnana and Vikrut Jnana.
Paroksha Gyan and Vikrut Gyan.
I like to understand with the example so that I understand what is a Paroksh Jnana. Pratyaksha is the Indriyas knowledge, right? Directly act. Our eyes, ear, nose, what they see, that is a Pratyaksha knowledge.
Yeah, so we have Pratyaksha, Anuman, and Sabda, right?
But here it says Paroksh and Vikrut.
Where does it say Paroksha and Vikrut?
I have to get it out.
Krishna Bhagavata Jnana Sambhitera Sara Brahma Jnana Adhika Sabatara Parivar. So, in Bhagavad Gita, second verse of the ninth chapter, it says, Raja Vidya Raja Guyam Pavitraminam Uttamam Pratyaksha. Pratyaksha. Right? Raja Vidya Raja Guyam Pavitraminam Uttamam Pratyaksha Avagamam Dharmam Susukam Kartam Avaya. Is the king of this knowledge, is the king of all education. Raja Vidya. The king of all education. Right? He's the king of all education. Right? So,
Here in English, it says indirect knowledge. I have a Gujarati book, it says a Paroksh knowledge.
okay, so we
Here
saw
in
about the
English, it
indirect
says,
knowledge.
right.
Right? The indirect knowledge, the example is Brahman realization, where the Gyanis use this neti theory of, oh, it is not this, it is not this, based on the mental speculation. Right? So ultimately they come to the realization of the impersonal um, state of the Supreme Lord. Or they come to the that topmost realization is what of a Jnani? That Lord is impersonal, right? Lord is impersonal. And Aham Brahmasmi, I am the spirit soul. That's the topmost realization of a jnani, right? So that's called, what is it called? Paroksha?
In Gujarati, it says Paroksham. I have a Gujarati book of
Okay.
Caitanya Caritamrita.
That's
But I found out English what is the indirect,
So indirect.
direct, indirect, and Vikrut.
Yeah, so Vikrut is perverted.
Yeah,
So that perverted knowledge, as we explained, is the knowledge by senses,
right,
by sense perception. Knowledge by sense perception is called Vikrut or perverted knowledge.
right.
Knowledge by native by mental speculation is called indirect knowledge.
Okay, which is a negative cognition, what you
Yeah,
tell.
negative cognition.
And Pratyakshanan,
And and direct knowledge, pratyaksha gyan, comes through this descending process of parampara system. There's a direct knowledge. Descending process that, okay, the Supreme Lord himself gives this knowledge via the Sambit potency to Tene Brahma Hridaya Adi Kavaye. He reveals himself in the heart of Lord Brahma and he imparts knowledge to Lord Brahma, who then passes on to the descending process to Narad Muni. He passes on to Vyasdeva, and in that disciplic succession, this direct knowledge is given, knowledge as it is. But that is possible, the direct knowledge being given to the Sambit Sakti of the Supreme Lord. Is that okay?
yeah, Parampara knowledge is the direct knowledge.
Yeah, parampara knowledge.
Indirect by negative, negation, not this, this.
Yes,
And Vikrut by our senses. Okay,
by
got
our
it.
senses.
And how do we realize the God realization? That last two lines says, right? And that how do we get a God realization with the Samvit Shakti and Antarang Shakti together? Something that's talking
Yes, the
Antara
Sambit Shakti and
Shakti
Antaranga Shakti,
so- and
when they
Haladini
mix
Shakti
it
mixed
together, the
together.
Sambit factor of cognition is enlightened by the Ladini potency of the same internal energy, right?
Can you elaborate that? I didn't understand that sentence.
Yeah, but when the Sambit factor of cognition is enlightened by the Ladini potency of the same internal energy, Ladini potency is what? The pleasure potency of the Supreme Lord, right? In the next verse,
Right.
we talk about Ladini potency of the Supreme Lord, which is Prema, love of God, right? So that Ladini potency of the whenever I is just as it's mentioned, Atate Krishna Namadinna Bhavet Gramin Jai. By our blunt material senses, we cannot understand the Lord, right? By our blunt material senses, we can get perverted knowledge, but not direct knowledge.
Mhm.
Only when our eyes are anointed, Premanjana Shurita Bhakti Vilochanana, when it is anointed by the love of God, and what is that love of God? The Ladini potency,
Mhm.
right? So when the eyes are anointed by the love of God, Ladini potency, then so the Samvit potency acting with that Ladini potency, that love of God, when the eyes are anointed, when that cognition, our cognitive power is to understand, to have knowledge, right? So when
Mhm.
our senses are anointed by the love of God, then we can understand the Supreme Personality of Godhead.
Mhm.
That's what, in short, it means about when the Samvit factor of cognition. Samvit factor is what? The knowledge factor of cognition, knowledge factor of identification.
Mhm.
When it is enlightened by
Aladini.
pleasure, the love, pleasure potency of the Supreme Lord, or the love of God, which is also the internal energy of the Supreme Lord, one can attain knowledge of the Supreme Personality of Godhead.
Mhm.
In other words, in Brahma Samhita, the words Premanjana Shurita Bhakti Vilochanena Santa Sadaiva Hridayeshu Vilokayanti. Right? Unless one's eyes are anointed by the law of God, one cannot see the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Is that okay?
Yes, Prabhuji, thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you very much for making me also understand through. Yeah, these are technical terms, but when we understand it in this discussion, then we can understand things better. Okay, any other questions? Discussions?
Hare Krishna Prabhuji. Hari
Haribol?
Bol. Can you please, this is complicated, so can you please summarize it in a few words, like in a few lines? Again, I know you've
Okay.
done it. I know you've done it.
Well, so in few lines, if you have to summarize where position of Srimati Radharani is being established in these verses, right? So in the previous verses, it was explained about um, that Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's internal reason, he came to understand Srimati Radharani's love for him, for Krishna. So he came in the form and complexion of Srimati Radharani, right? So then, in that same mood, now it is further explained about the position of Srimati Radharani. So it's mentioned that, first of all, Radharani is the internal energy of the Supreme Lord. And in that internal energy, there are three segments: Sat Chidananda, or Sandhini, Sambit, Ladini. Sandhini is the existential potency of the Supreme Lord. Sambit is the knowledge potency of the Supreme Lord. Ladini is the pleasure potency of the Supreme Lord. Right. So this existential potency of the Supreme Lord, by which the Lord, no, the entire existence takes place. The Lord, he appears, his mother, his father, that Vrindavan abode, that is all due to the Sandhini potency of the Supreme Lord, the existential potency of the Supreme Lord. Right. So to understand the existential potency of the Supreme Lord, how does Lord exist, or he appears within us? He appears within us only when our consciousness is pure consciousness, right? Which is Suddha Sattva Vasudeva state. Vasudeva state, not Vasudeva, Vasudeva state. So in the Suddha Sattva, which is called as Vasudeva state, Vasudev manifest, which is to the Sandhini potency of the Supreme Lord. And when the Vasudeva manifests, his name, form, qualities, and everything is known. His abode is known. Okay? You understand that? The Sandhini potency?
Yes, Prabhuji. Yes, much better.
Then the second one is the Samvit potency of the Supreme Lord, the knowledge potency of the Supreme Lord, by which one can understand the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Right? So, how can we completely nicely understand the Supreme Personality of God? First of all, we cannot completely understand. Even Ananta Sesha with his millions of hoods, he cannot completely understand the complete aspect of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. But still, to understand the Supreme Lord, um, right, and his energies, which all comes under the knowledge potency of the Supreme Lord, one has to be freed from this Pratyaksha Praman, Anuman Praman, but it comes from Sabda Praman. It cannot be based on direct sense perception, which is perverted knowledge, or Anuman Praman, logic, or mental speculation, the neti process, which is indirect knowledge, or the only way one can understand is a direct knowledge. And that direct knowledge, when it has love of God, right, which is the Ladini potency of the Supreme Lord, one can understand the Supreme Personality of Godhead, which comes through parampara, by the Lord's mercy only. Is that okay? Mantaji?
Yes, Prabhuji. Yes.
So that's the Sambit. So
And the last one I understand, the pleasure
the,
potency of the
the
Lord.
Ladini potency we will understand much
Mm.
more in detail in subsequent verses, which is the Ananda potency, through which is not Srimati Radharani. Ananda potency is ultimately that pleasure potency of the Supreme Lord. Radharani is the embodiment of that pleasure potency of the Supreme Lord. Samvit potency, Lord Krishna himself is the embodiment. Right? The knowledge potency of the Supreme Lord or Lord Balram is the embodiment, which goes, the spiritual master is the original spiritual master. And Sandhini existential potency is Lord Krishna himself is the embodiment. So Lord Krishna with Lord Balram and Srimati Radharani comprises this entire internal energy of the Supreme Lord. Is that all right?
Yes, Prabhuji. Prabhuji, is there anywhere where there is like a flow chart to explain this, like in diagram form, like anywhere you have seen?
Yeah, yeah. I'm sure there are flow charts for this. I will share it in the Nityan Bhagavata Sevya group.
Okay, Prabhuji. Thank you so much. Thank you, Haribol.
Our Gauranga Darshan Prabhu is good at flow charts, I'm sure, for explaining Sandhini, Samvit, and Ladini in detail. There should be flow chart somewhere. And once I come across that, I will send it to you.
Okay. Thank you so much, Prabhuji. Thank you. I
Thank
have a better understanding. Thank you.
Thank you.
Haribol.
Thank you all very much. Any other questions before we log out? Okay, thank you all very much. We would like to wish everybody a happy Krishna conscious evening, and hopefully you can think about the Supreme Lord and all these potencies of the Supreme Lord when you take rest today, because when whatever we hear before sleeping, No, we think about it. So, Vanchakalpatarubhayascha kripa sindhubhayavacha patitanam
पतितानां
pavanebhyo
पावनेभ्यो वैष्णवेभ्यो
Vaishnavebhyo
नमो
namo namo Vaishnavendra ki
गोविंद की
jai.
जय जय
Granthar Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita
की
ki jai.
जय
Gaur Premanande.
हरि हरि बोल थैंक यू प्रभु जी हरे
Hare Krishna. Hare Bol.